Battle with the Devil. Alexey lived in a small village, practically lost amidst the majestic forests of our country, like thousands of others. He was a hard-working, diligent man. He was always a role model for his neighbors, a loving father, a caring husband. Things always prospered in his hands. He spent most of his time in his own garden. He cultivated the land and regularly harvested a good crop. He adored his wife Marina and their children. Every evening they gathered at a large table and talked late into the night. This tradition had not bored them for many years. The family was happy. One day, grief came to Alexey's house. His wife started to get sick. At first, she experienced general weakness, and then a dry cough joined it. What seemed like a common flu turned out to be a terrible disease. Alexey visited dozens of doctors, consulted the best specialists, but they only shrugged their shoulders and shamefully hid their eyes. The situation was hopeless. The family gradually resigned themselves to the fact that nothing could help Marina. Meanwhile, the woman withered more and more with each day, and Alexey recognized Marina less and less. To somehow cope with the bitterness and helplessness, he started drinking. Gradually, the house fell into disrepair. The fields became overgrown with weeds. Because of the alcohol, Alexey even stopped inquiring about his wife's condition. He abandoned his children. They had to endure hard times without their father's support. Their evening gatherings at the table first became less frequent and then stopped completely. Alexey never got to say goodbye to Marina. She passed away quietly while Alexey was sleeping drunk in the kitchen. The loss of his wife completely broke the man's heart, and he began to drink even more heavily. He simply stopped noticing anything in front of him. He didn't recognize his children, constantly walked around drunk, and attempts to reason with him were met with hostility. When Alexey resorted to physical violence, the children packed up and ran away to their grandmother in the middle of the night. They didn't want to know him anymore. Alexey himself didn't even immediately notice the absence of his children, but upon learning of their disappearance, he didn't even bother to look for them. He just continued to drown his sorrow. Local alcoholics became regular guests in the house where love and harmony once reigned. One evening, as the sun slowly crawled below the horizon, and Alexey, drunk, slept face down on the table, he suddenly woke up as if jolted. Looking around, he scanned the room with his eyes, then staggered around the living room and bedrooms. An eerie silence awaited him everywhere. A sudden chill ran down Alexey's spine, and a cold, clammy sweat covered his skin. To calm down and warm up, he sat on the sofa and picked up a half-empty bottle. With trembling hands, he took a gulp, and the burning liquid spread down his throat, gradually calming and warming him. Throwing aside the empty bottle, Alexey suddenly heard the front door creak softly. Then it closed just as quietly, and a hoarse, insinuating whisper came from the hallway. "Lesha," said a nasty little voice with an ingratiating intonation, "I brought you some vodka. You're out of tea already." Alexey was stunned. He didn't yet understand who was talking to him, but he already saw a furry head poking through the doorway. "It's hard for you, Lesha," the furry head said sympathetically. "You lost your beloved." Alexey began to moan agonizingly, louder and louder, as the furry head began to grow into a small humanoid body covered in thick, coarse hair, until finally, two small goat hooves timidly appeared. The small creature, the size of a first grader, held a full bottle of expensive alcohol in its clawed paws and carefully approached Alexey. "There's another bottle in the shed." The little guest continued to approach, smoothly swaying its thin rat-like tail. "We'll drink this one and go get the next one, Lesha, right?" Alexey jerked, but his body felt heavy. It was difficult to move his legs, They practically wouldn't budge, but his arms moved. Alexey waved them in front of his face with all his might, as if driving away a hallucination. Lesha, why live without her? Your traitorous children don't want to see you. You have nothing more to give to the world. Why are you here? Just suffering, that's all. The little devil pulled a glass from behind his back, carefully poured the contents of the bottle into it, and offered it to the homeowner. No, go away. I'm not going anywhere with you. At that moment, the nocturnal visitor furiously splashed the contents of the glass into Alexey's face. The man's face began to burn from the strong alcohol. He cried out. The devil immediately began to increase in size and, grabbing the drunkard by the arm, started dragging him towards the door. Why should you continue to live without her? Drink a little more, and all the agonizing memories will simply disappear. The devil spoke in a loud, piercing bass voice, dragging Alexey by the arm. The victim himself tried to resist, but his legs wouldn't obey. They simply went limp. Meanwhile, his other hand tried to grab onto the walls, corners, floors, anything at all. Finally, his hand lost its nails, and soon his palm became slippery with blood. Alexey tried to moan, to cry out from the pain, resentment, and frustration, tried to call for help, but no one came. There was no one around at all. While the devil held the drunkard by the arm, the man's skin burned where he was gripped, but he still couldn't break free. After a few minutes, they both reached the shed. The devil flung open the door and, with a jerk, easily threw Alexey inside, then stood in the doorway, baring his fangs and smiling contentedly. Alexey, in a panic, examined the contents of the shed, trying to find something that could help him fight back. On the workbench, he saw another bottle of strong alcohol, and hanging from the ceiling, a rope tied into a tight noose. He realized that the devil wanted to force him to commit suicide. Alexey started to recite a prayer, but the devil just waved his hand as if brushing away a bothersome fly. The man's speech became slurred. Finally, he simply couldn't say anything and fell silent. He gave up. He was shaking wildly. He looked at the enormous devil in fear, panic, and madness. Gradually, somehow softening, the devil began to move towards the table with the bottle with calm steps. Dust rose with each heavy thud of his hooves on the floor. The devil poured more alcohol from the bottle into the glass and, crouching down, offered it to Alexey. Drink and forget your suffering. Think how easy it will be. Your whole life is already worthless. It will never be the same as before. Your children won't forgive you. You couldn't even see your wife off properly. Now you suffer and make others suffer. Don't you want to end this once and for all? Alexey, fighting the inner urge to drink, gritted his teeth. He felt the darkness tempting him, pulling him back into the bottomless abyss. He wanted to drink the alcohol and turn off this pain, wanted to end the string of suffering. Alexey understood that the devil was right, and that he had caused too much harm to his loved ones, that he was no longer worthy of living. He slowly began to reach for the glass, and the disgusting face of the otherworldly creature smiled and looked at him impatiently. "No," Alexey said loudly, as if speaking to himself. He managed to deal with the mush in his mouth and declared resolutely, "I can't do that. I have children. I have to be with them. I won't give up." For a second, the devil was even taken aback and simply looked at his victim in surprise. Then he laughed aloud, stretched out, and became even bigger, wider, and seemingly stronger. Smoothly and effortlessly, he lifted Alexey up, holding him by his clothes so that the man's head tilted back, and began slowly pouring vodka into his victim's mouth. While Alexey choked and tried to spit out the alcohol, the devil muttered, "Listen, how much longer can you endure this? How many more days will you be tormented by this emptiness? Your life is just an endless stream of pain, self-pity and contempt from everyone. Why don't you depart from this world with dignity? Every sip is a step towards freedom. Alexey grabbed his head and tried to push the devil's hand away from him, but to no avail. I am not afraid of you. I am not afraid of pain. I will not obey you. I will not abandon my children. Alexey found the strength to utter the words again. I will not let you establish power over me. The man managed to grab the bottle and smash it hard against the floor. It shattered into many pieces. He tried to fight back somehow, because he couldn't physically defeat the devil. The devil howled in anger and frustration, slammed Alexey against the floor, which was covered in shards of broken glass, and began slowly dragging his victim's body across them. Alexey didn't give up, although he was in terrible pain. You won't take me, he commanded, feeling a surge of strength. I will fight for my life, for the memory of Marina, for the happiness of my children. Alexey began to recite a prayer, and this time the devil couldn't silence him, no matter how hard he tried. Finally, the devil recoiled, as if realizing that the spell hadn't worked and he had lost. He began to move towards the exit. Something was pulling him away. At the doorway, the devil narrowed his eyes angrily and said, You can resist for a long time, Alexey, but you are only human. And like any human, one day you will find your limit, and I will be waiting for you there. Suddenly he lunged and slashed Alexey across the chest with his claws, leaving a deep wound on his victim's body. This is a souvenir for you, Alyosha. I will be waiting for you. Alexey, having found new courage and strength, began to rise from his knees. His legs weren't fully obeying him yet, but he still stood up, leaning on surrounding objects. Despite being covered in wounds and blood, he still looked bravely at his enemy. The devil, grinning, dissolved into the air, and Alexey remained standing, looking at the noose hanging from the ceiling. He knew that the fight wasn't over yet, but now he was ready to face any trials. Faith in himself, love for his children, and the memory of Marina gave him the strength to continue. So, he decided that he would no longer give darkness power over him. Every day was a step towards the light. He would change his destiny. At that moment, he knew it for sure. However, this story didn't pass without a trace. Since then, he felt someone's attentive gaze upon him. It seemed to him that someone was constantly watching him from the dark corners of the house. One day, Alexey spent the evening with his children. They sat at the table in the cozy kitchen and laughed, almost like in the good old days. He felt his heart fill with joy like never before. At this time, two small figures were sitting on the roof of his house. Little men. Both had beards. One had a smaller beard, the other had a longer one. The one with the smaller beard, with a sly smile on his face, said, I noticed how successfully you managed to scare him, but why? The other little man with a long beard, looking somewhere into the distance, shrugged his shoulders and replied, The duties of a domovoi or brownie are not only to look after the house. Our duty is also to take care of our household members, especially if they are good people who have simply lost their way. Sometimes to bring a person back to real life, we need to play our part. The sun was setting below the horizon, and cheerful songs and children's laughter sounded in the house. Alexey spoke about his hopes and about a new life, full of light. And now, beside him again were his children, his greatest treasure. The devil seemed to be left behind, but Alexey didn't forget about him, especially when the scars on his chest ached at night, and he never again allowed alcohol to take his life away.